Mickey 17 was one of the most anticipated releases of this year and last year because it's been pushed back so many times, but it's here now and it's pretty good.
Earth, nothing was working out, and I wanted to get the hell out of there.
You're applying to be an expendable? You read through the paperwork.
Yeah. I should have read through it.
Mickey 17 is Bong Joon Ho's first film since Parasite, and that, of course, brings with it very lofty expectations. But with multiple delays in its release, there's also been a lot of nervousness about how it would ultimately land. The film is based on the novel Mickey 7, but interestingly, Bong Joon Ho was already developing the script before the book was even published. He was essentially given a 10-page treatment of the novel. He kind of fell in love with the story, and the rest is history. The plot follows Mickey Barnes, played by Robert Pattinson, who joins a space colony as a quote-unquote expendable, basically a disposable worker who gets reprinted, not cloned. Bong Joon Ho was clear about this, gets reprinted every time he dies and is used essentially for research purposes. There's been some talk about the financials of Mickey 17, and I'm not really going to dive into that because I don't think that that's how we should frame the discourse when it comes to films, but the reality is that it's set to lose a lot of money, and, that could have something to do with it only getting a couple weeks in theaters before immediately then going to streaming. I obviously wish that we could get back to some extended theatrical runs, but we're living in a very stream-centric world, for better or for worse. Moving back to Bong Joon Ho, it's pretty fascinating to look at his Korean work and his English work and kind of compare them side by side. Mickey 17 is, of course, one of those English Bong Joon Ho films, and it's pretty similar in a number of ways to some of his other English work like Okta and Snowpiercer. His Korean work, though, like Memories of Murder, The Host, and of course Parasite, tend to be a little bit grittier. The humor is a bit darker, and it leans into elements, thematic explorations of human desperation. And as a result, the social commentary in his Korean work tends to be a little bit more biting. His English language films like Mickey 17 tend to be larger in scale. The humor is more absurd, and the social commentary generally is less hard-hitting and more overtly satirical. I'm not here to say whether one is better than the other, but it's a good thing to know when you go into a Bong Joon Ho project. Mickey 17 is not Parasite. What does make Mickey 17 work, though, for the most part, is Robert Pattinson. To me, Pattinson is one of those actors who completely disappears into his roles, and this is no different in Mickey 17. He plays multiple versions of himself, which means that at times he's acting opposite his own performance. He pulled inspiration from a few different sources for different parts of his character or characters, like Jim Carrey from Dumb and Dumber, or Steve Buscemi in Fargo, and even some Steve-O and Johnny Knoxville. I didn't know this, but apparently Pattinson is a big Jackass fan, which just adds to the mysterious aura around this man. He's very difficult to figure out. Pattinson also improvised some of the dialogue that we hear in the final cut of the film, particularly as Mickey 18, which gives that particular version of Mickey Barnes a kind of looser, more unpredictable energy. Outside of Pattinson, Mark Ruffalo is pretty hilarious in this movie, but his performance can be a bit distracting at times. He plays Kenneth Marshall, who's basically this egomaniacal politician, failed politician, overseeing this new colony on Niflheim. And despite Bong Joon Ho suggesting that no character is based on real politicians, Ruffalo's mannerisms and cadence and delivery are very Trumpian. It's pretty difficult not to see that. It is a fun performance, but as I mentioned, there's some moments that it leans a little bit far into caricature. That being said, I do absolutely love that Ruffalo is taking on these kind of weirder, over-the-top roles like this one, and of course Duncan Wedderburn in Poor Things, and it just feels like he's having a great time, and I'm here for it. Visually, Mickey 17 is full of contrasts. The human printing lab where these Mickeys are kind of recycled into new versions of themselves is the only super clean, sleek, entirely futuristic part of the ship. The rest of the ship feels very cramped and grimy and industrial, and this sort of juxtaposition is very intentional. Bong Joon Ho and his production designer Fiona Crombie took inspiration from subs and oil tankers and cargo ships, basically creating that industrial feeling that shows that the workers are maybe undervalued despite them being the ones that are keeping the ship going. It's a very classic Bong Joon Ho aesthetic. I mean, just think back to Snowpiercer, very similar elements. The creepers also play a big role in this film, these alien life forms, and this comes in partnership with his longtime collaborator Hee-Chul Jang, who designed the creatures in both The Host and Okta, and interestingly, he didn't just design the look of the creepers here, he actually developed their entire evolutionary backstory, from how they hold on to body heat to how the younger ones curl up and roll as a sort of survival mechanism. He even worked directly with the sound and VFX teams to make sure that the movements of their mouths and the sounds that they're making matched their anatomy. So it's pretty cool to hear about some of the work that goes into that behind the scenes. Beyond the production design and the creatures, what stood out to me about Mickey 17, which doesn't feel like it really hit for most folks, unfortunately, is some of its thematic exploration. Not the bits about cloning or colonialism or political rhetoric, but more about what it has to say about self-doubt and self-sabotage. Mickey constantly talks down to himself, he belittles his own worth, and he assumes that he is never good enough even when things go his way. This isn't really a spoiler, but when the creepers refuse to eat him, he doesn't feel relieved about it. He just assumes that he's some sort of bad meat that isn't even worth consuming. And when we get to the final beat of the film, again, no real spoilers, it just worked for me. I understood this deeper sense of self-loathing and self-blame and abuse that is lost to, I think, most people amidst the satire and absurdity, but it's definitely there. Ultimately, Bong takes this satirical but still deeply human approach, and it does give the film a little bit of emotional weight. At the end of the day, Mickey 17 is somewhat funny, it's generally well acted, and it explores some interesting ideas. But if you're looking for something as tight and socially biting as Parasite or Memories of Murder, for example, you might be disappointed. Similarly, it doesn't spend too much time investing in the really deep sci-fi elements, and it isn't overly action-packed, so if you came just from the trailers, you might also be disappointed. But if you are a fan of Bong Joon Ho's previous English work and enjoy satire and absurdity with some real thematic exploration beneath the surface, then it's definitely worth a watch. Subscribe, like, comment, all those things are helpful to me, so please do them. I would appreciate it, and I hope that you watch the next video when that one comes out as well. Cheers.